this is Adam from ACE Engineering. Just want to give you guys a video today. We're going to be installing the JL fenders that we've developed. So we're going to start here. We're in the shop today. It's a little noisy, a lot of people talking, but want to walk you through it. So first thing we're going to do, obviously, is remove our JL fenders. So I'll remove that. If there's anything technical inside of it, we'll try to show you some video how to remove it, but it's pretty straightforward. A lot of just plastic clips that hold the fender to the body. So we're going to get that off of there, and then we'll start the video back up and kind of show the installation process. So after the inner fender is removed, inner fender liner, we're just going to disconnect the electrical here for the lamps up front, and then you can see just there's plastic clips all the way around the perimeter. So we're going to slide those off and remove the fender. Like I said, we're going to start by removing the wiring harness from the Jeep. So we're going to take this out, and now we're going to start to pull these off of the body. These are all just push pins. Separate from the body, all the push pins are out. Remove that guy, 10 millimeter.
10 millimeter. And then we got
another 10 millimeter right here. Voila. Actually, on the inside of these clips, you can get pliers back here and you can squeeze the nose of this clip together to pull them out. I really didn't care, we'll pull it off. I'm gonna remove the rest of these now. Obviously, we're not gonna be returning back the factory fender at any point. Because what you're doing is you're squeezing the nose of this together to remove it from the body. Sit down now, clean up, prep the surface before we install the fender. We're gonna move this little accent piece off the fender also. That's got the same type of clips on it. You can squeeze it from the back or pull it off, but you may damage the clips if you do it that way. So one of the things we want to salvage out of the front fender is this harness. So basically we're going to remove the clips that connect the wiring harness to the fender itself. We're going to walk this all the way down. After these are removed, we're going to need this harness. So anywhere in this area you can trim the harness. Obviously these connections into the factory lights we're not going to use, so we're going to be splicing into this. So there's plenty of length here. We're actually going to trim this back even later, but for right now, let's just cut this off here and keep this harness. This is going to get mounted back inside the fender at the factory location, ran forward to the front of the fender to tie into the light. So we'll splice into that later. Now that we've got the fender removed, we're just going to hang the new fender. So just a couple of the washers and bolts in a couple locations just to get it up into position, and then we'll worry about fastening everything together. So we'll just set this up in location here. Maybe just run one through there for now. Just so it's in location. Let's drop another one in, say, back here somewhere. All right, so that gets us our fender up into position. Now in all of these locations, you'll see it matches the factory provisions hole. So we're going to grab nuts and bolts and we're going to put them in and start the nuts on the back, get everything lined up, and then we'll worry about tightening it down after we get them in location. So right now, bolt and washer through all these locations, and we'll start to put the nuts or the washer and the nuts on the back side of the fender. We'll start here, get a washer on there. We'll just get a nut to get it started just so we're in location. All right, let's just kind of hand started there just to, again, find the right location. So let's just put a couple of those in so we get it up into the correct position. All right, we've got a couple started now. And we're gonna leave everything loose, just so after we get everything in position, we can put it up into position and actually dial in the location before we start to tighten the screw down. So we're gonna follow those steps all the way around, a total of 11 bolts per side. So the trick to a lot of this install, to access behind the panel, is just use a set of pliers, hold the nut into position. You're gonna put it back behind, line it up with the hole to put your bolt and washer through. So basically all of these, you'd line this up, take the bolt and washer, make sure it's lined up, and then start it. All right, this rear one's a little bit trickier because it's so far into the body. So what we've done is we took the nut, put it in an open end wrench, put some painter's tape on it to hold it. So now we're gonna feed it through until it lines up with the hole, like so. And now we're gonna start the bolt. Now we're started. You can either run this in a little bit right now, pull the wrench back out, and at some point now when we get everything in location, now we can tighten it, put the wrench back into position. All right, so now that we've got everything started by hand all the way around, the 11 bolts along the fender, now we can go through, we know it's in the right location because everything started, so now we're gonna go through and just tighten everything up. Before we move on to the electrical, we're gonna install the light and run the wiring harness. There we go, just nice and snug. There we go. All right, so now that we've got the fender installed, we're gonna move on to the lighting portion. So this is the supplied LED light that we give you. So it has the white courtesy running light on the bottom and then the amber turn signal. Now this light will work on all JLs, whether you have the LED package or you don't. So any configuration, it'll work. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna drop this through and we're gonna snap the light into place. And one of the things we're gonna do, even though this is a relatively tight fit, it's pretty rigidly mounted, we know we're gonna put this vehicle through a lot of abuse. So on the inside, I'm gonna run a bead of epoxy on the inside of the light just to secure it in a location, just to make sure. So now we've got this through. This is the wiring harness that we salvaged from the factory fender. We're gonna clip that back into location. And we're gonna start to route this up inside the fender up to this area. So what I'm gonna do now is I'll get all this trimmed up and spliced back, and then we'll start the butt connection and how we're actually gonna route it inside the vehicle. Now that we've got the light in place, we brought the harness up. Just for ease of explanation, I just kind of laid this out so we can understand what wires are going to go. Obviously, we're not going to leave it like this. We're going to trim everything back and splice everything together correctly. But just for ease, this is a LED lighting package on this Rubicon. You're going to have 2 black wires, 2 white with brown, a solid yellow, white with a yellow stripe, and white with a green stripe. The black wire from our light goes to either black wire. It really doesn't matter. It's a ground, it doesn't matter. The supply line, the white wire, will go to either of the white with the brown stripe. There's 2 of them, so just pick one. The yellow line from our light will go to the white with the green stripe, and that's the turn signal. This wire right here, the white coming out, is the white running light, and then we have ground. So after we trim this back, we're just gonna trim these, tape these off, so these are not going to be used on the LED light package connection. We're gonna go over to the JL Sport and we'll show you that next. So this is what the harness looks like coming off of the non-LED package. So we're gonna use the same turn signal, white to the green, as we used on the LED package, and we're gonna use the same white with the brown stripe for the running light, and there's only 1 black ground wire. So these 3 will be used on the non-LED lighting package. These will get clipped and taped off. We don't need these anymore. So that's the difference. On the LED lighting package, we have more harness lines coming in that connect inside the LEDs from the factory. All right, so now that we got everything trimmed to length, we routed the factory harness up inside the engine compartment. We'll tuck all this back and zip tie everything out of the way here in a minute. But just to follow up here, the yellow wire coming off of our light is spliced to the white with the green. The white is the white wire with the brown line, and black to black. Everything else is trimmed back here, taped off, so we don't let anything touch, any of the wires touch. So we'll get this all taped off, zip tied up, and let's check the lights and see how they work. So we can see now we've got our running light on and our turn signal on at this time. It maintains the correct flash frequency, and you can see the back is still working. That's one of the problems if they're not wired correctly, where one will work or not, or you'll get a rapid flash of the LED. So that completes the installation of the front. You know, putting the bolts in, we've got the light in, wired, all the harnesses tucked and hidden behind the vehicle. So now we'll move on to the rear. This one, on the front, we actually had the inner fender already removed because we had our ACE inner fender inside that one. So this one is all we're gonna do. We're gonna remove the inner fender first, and we're gonna remove all these little Christmas tree tabs all over, so we can remove this first, and then we'll move on to the fender. A lot of these are breaking off as I move it, but I really don't care. We're not going to reuse this, but if you took your time and a little more ginger, you could probably salvage these, but we're just going to remove them so we can get the fender out, and then I'll remove what's left inside the wheel well here in a minute. Fender. All right, that's off. Obviously, I just ripped it off, but some of these little clips that are in location, we'll rip those off now. It actually didn't damage the fender, it just broke the clip. So we'll remove all those as we use those locations to mount our rear fender. All right, we'll get it cleaned up and go on to the install. All right, so now we're moving on to the rear. Just for ease of installation, kind of a reference for you guys. There are 13 locations that the rear fender attaches to. The green color represents the holes that we're not going to do anything to. The supplied hardware will bolt right directly through that location. The red locations, 4 on this side and 4 on this side, we're going to open up to the 33/64 hole diameter for the nut cert. So I'm gonna get those drilled, and we'll come back to kind of installing the nut certs and what that takes. All right, so we've got all the nut certs put in the location drilled. I got one left just to kind of talk to you guys about it and how I install them. So with your inner fender, or with your fender kit, you'll get the supplied nut cert tool, which basically we push the nut cert through, you hold onto this, we're gonna tighten this, it's gonna draw the bead in and seal in the back of the fender. You know, the problem with this thing, you know, it takes a little bit of time. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, any local auto parts store, you can rent one of these. It'll probably cost you $6, $7 for the day, and it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Not that that tool doesn't work, it's just gonna take a lot of time off the installation process. So this is the tool we use. We're gonna thread on the nut cert here and put it into location. A lot of times with that 33/64 drill, these are really tight. And if you can't press it through, obviously we don't want to dent the sheet metal. Put the drill bit in, kind of wallow it around a little bit, and just open the hole up. So sometimes you'll have to do that, sometimes you don't. That's in now. We're gonna clamp this up. I'm gonna tighten it one more time, just to get an extra little bead built on the back of the nut cert. Thread this out, and now it's in location. So that's a lot easier than the other tool, but again, both of them work just fine. All right, so now that we've got all the holes, the nut certs put into place, we're just gonna hang the fender just as we did on the front, just to get it into location. These two here actually are the easiest because these are the through holes that are already located in the body. You see these two lines up here. We're gonna take this, we're just gonna set it in location like that. So now that it's hanging there, now we can take the additional hardware, lift the fender into place, and run our nuts or our bolts into the threaded inserts all the way around, and the through hardware that's also included. Another thing that I would recommend basically is we have all supplied stainless steel hardware, is just putting a little bit of Loctite anti-seize on the bolt, because it's stainless steel and we're threaded into a zinc plated nutsert, we don't want any gulling to happen and for it to bind up. So using the anti-seize makes for easy installation, and then later down the road, if you ever need to remove them for whatever reason, the bolts will be easily able to come out. All right, so now that we've got all the bolts in that are the nutsets area, there's just 4 locations left where there's just through holes, and you can see they all line up here. Bottom ones are 1/4 are going to go through that location, and then the 5/16 bolts through the top, 5/16 bolts through the top, another 1/4 here, and now we'll put on our nuts on the back side of those 4 and tighten them up, and that's it. Tight. All right, so that completes the install of the fenders. Obviously, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Pretty straightforward install. Obviously, the front just is through bolts. The rear, we've got a couple nutserts to put in, but overall, pretty easy install. I think one side took me probably about an hour and 15 minutes altogether, even with the video. So not too bad. Appreciate you guys watching this. Hopefully, it helps out on your install. Real solid, real happy.